Cheers, everybody. Welcome to my back to my book review channel. Got a very interesting book today that probably not a lot of people have read. If you look at that, you'll see what is the V2 rocket, Second World War rocket, and it's a book. So the V1 was the doodle bug, that kind of chugged along, and then the engine would cut out and drop. This was the later one, the V2 rocket, just like the picture on the front, and it's written by Major General Walter Dornberger, one of the main people responsible for building this thing, and it's a very interesting, very interesting read. It's it's interesting in lots of different facets. Firstly, from the technical aspects of the actual rocket, and of course the fact that it's the Second World War, the fact that you've got, that the main protagonist Hitler appears every now and again, which is, you know, yeah, just how he appears one day and what he's like and what he says is, well, it's incredible. Look into it. So yeah, so this will be my little review of it. Um, I'll 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 tell you when there's a few spoilers coming up, if I think that they're on the way. Um, I think one of the I think one of the people who get the most out of it, and I would almost guarantee that he's read it, is Elon Musk. How he's obviously trying to get up into space and get to Mars. Um, it's I'm sure he will have read it. It's a very technical book at the start. When I say technical, you know, it's like it's like an engineer's written it, and I think he perhaps was an engineer, or was certainly surrounded by engineers. So there's lots of, we needed alcohol this, and we changed the thickness of the skin from aluminium to steel, and then we had to do it 3 inches thick rather than 2 inches thick. There's lots of talk of that, because it's his baby, and the development of it. So if you're just looking for, Hitler's in there, then you have a long wait for him to appear. He's not in there all the time, and it talks a lot about the development of the rocket and the different stages and all the troubles that they've had. Right, okay, so yeah, um, spoilers if you like. So yes, it's a technical, lots of technical stuff in there. It basically describes the history of rocket development, before the First World War, before the Second World War. Sorry, there were lots of international talk about the possibility of space travel with rockets, and I don't know whether there's a little bit of excuse making in there. We never wanted to develop a bomb. We were only interested in space travel. That kind of talk. So the so there's that element of it at the start. And then there's a lot of time spent in the book, because this was expensive. The the war doesn't appear in the book, apart from in the background, for a very long time. They're just kind of left to their own devices. Maybe the British and Americans and Russians or whoever were aware of something going on, but they weren't bombed or anything like that. So they kind of developed, a little peaceably. That his main complaints are always trying to get priority, because there was kind of a priority system that the Germans were using. They had different levels and of priority, and they could never get high up enough. Um, and it turns out later in the book that, well, yeah, there's a bit where Hitler apologises to him for not believing that it would work. But I think, yeah, I think Hitler obviously didn't do the fighting himself, so I think Hitler saw his role as motivational in his very, very peculiar and a very, very peculiar way. So there's a lot at the start, and it's like, oh, there was years lost, and we could have had these weapons ready. We could have had the rockets ready a lot sooner if we'd have only been given more priority. So there's lots of excuses in there. Then when it gets kind of more towards 1942-43, and this thing is kind of becoming a little bit more successful, in other words, they're able to kind of launch the thing, and then it's about directing it. All the different characters start appearing. Himmler turns up. There's some other characters as well. A couple who I'd never thought were as big in the war as they turn out to be. They all turn up and they all want a piece of the action. They want to kind of take over. Himmler turns up and tries to take it under the SS, and it's quite dangerous because it can be, you're they do that totalitarian thing of basically just kind of it's a power grab, where like a business power grab, but with the ideological element of the totalitarian ideological thinking of we'll just call you a traitor. And good luck in getting out of it. So there's that type of thing starts to come in. But then Mr. General Walter Dornberger, he's trying to get power over all rocket developments across the country and all sorts. So there's all kind of little power games going on. And the war starts to come in more and more. They get, the site where they're developing these rockets gets bombed, and there's an interesting bit where he's firstly, he's a bit of a hero. He runs into burning buildings, all this type of stuff. There's what they won't realise that we pick up on when you read it is that there's an aristocracy element as well. Lots of, just like in this country, the aristocracy have strong links into the army because, historically they'd be the nobles that would, control the area, and to control the area you would have to be military, and then of course that fed into the army. So you have lots of kind of in the German army, all these nobles that are that are high up, and that caused a friction between basically they didn't like Hitler because he wasn't one of them, wasn't of royal blood, and he was only a corporal, and he didn't have all that kind of background. So Hitler never fully trusted the army, and everything went via the SS and his people, and this Walter Dornberger, whatever he's called, when he meets people for the first time, he's kind of always looking them up and down. Oh, he's got a weak chin. He's he doesn't look, he's got a podgy cheeks, or he's got soft fingers, all this type of stuff. So he's kind of checking them up and down, really checking them out when he sees them, as if he thinks he can read their personality from whether or not that they've got podgy fingers. And there's a bit of an aristocratic background to it. So when the place is bombed and they're running around and he's taking charge and he runs into a burning building, there's one point where he can't find his boots because he's Batman, the person responsible for polishing them was he'd taken them to clean, so he was kind of walking around in, I can't remember, slippers or something. So you kind of just get a little bit of a hint of that aristocracy, um, that kind of I'm rightfully running everything because of my um, family connections and historical royal blood, that type of thing. Uh, and then he goes into his um, flat or house, wherever his house, wherever he's living, is on fire, and he goes in and he tries to rescue his it's really funny, he tries to rescue his stamp collection, his rifles, and he said basically there's a fire, and he surrounded himself with a cloak, and he grabbed the nearest thing that he could. So he lost his poor stamp collection and his guns, and he runs outside, and he's ended up with in his hand some kind of really tatty porcelain ashtray, which is really quite. I thought it was really funny. Obviously, he didn't. But the other noticeable thing on in the book is how so the war is kind of is creeping in. But what's noticeable, of course, is he's not. He's really trying to put it at a distance. Oh, we only ever wanted to develop space travel. We weren't thinking of getting a bomb. So he's got, he talks about, the success rate later on of how many rockets were fired, but he doesn't mention, oh, I'll be glad when the war's over. Basically, he doesn't mention that they're making armaments, they're killing people, and when they're bombed, oh, I'm furious that we've been bombed, and a few people did die, but he's got no appreciation that from the other side, of course they're going to be wanting to blow up these things because you're trying to blow up them. There's no acknowledgement of it at all. When he's talking to Himmler, there's one bit. It's so he all the way through has been technical and I'm army. He's really distancing themselves from the SS, from Hitler. So he questions him, oh, I was brave at one point and I questioned Himmler. And then he lists Himmler's and, by implication, Hitler's. And he said it in Mein Kampf that basically they want to take over great swathes of land in Russia and, for the Germanic peoples. And they just say casual lines like Himmler says, oh well, it's. It says something about like the Russians, but basically they said, oh yeah, we'll send a load of German guys over, and they're uneducated, but we'll basically we'll match them up with strong peasant Ukrainian women. So they're just going to take over swathes of Russia, Ukraine. So what does that mean? We're going to kill all the blokes? It's going back 2,000 years. So yeah, so that kind of thing just appears. So yeah, of course, there's absolutely no mention of concentration camps. Killing Jews or gypsies and prisoners of war. Nothing mentioned at all. There's then towards the end, he finally gets the chance to kind of take over the whole thing, but it's too late by now, and he's running around Germany, trying to get these weapons organised, to to have a little bit of an impact, but he knows it's too late. So he spends the last couple of months of the war just kind of sat around drinking wine, waiting for it to all unfold. And then at the end, it was kind of like, oh, I'm proud of the technical achievements of these rockets, but it's over to America now to kind of push through and see we can't get up into space, because that's what it was all been about, space travel. So it's a very, very interesting book. You'll have to wade through some of the technical stuff, so a bit of patience involved in there, but just for the appearance of well, obviously Hitler I won't spoil you. I won't spoil the first time that he comes in, but the book takes a little bit of a different turn there. You see firsthand, what that's obviously. We have our ideas of of Hitler and what he's about. So, but it's just interesting to kind of see that from somebody who met him and yeah, had to deal with him. Um, so yeah, so lots of technical stuff, but then later on, all these characters start to when they start becoming successful launching these things, just the characters, you could call it the madness if you like, but it's an organised madness, isn't it? Of what the place was like. He'd managed to avoid dealing much with the main characters, but they all show up in the end when it gets down to the wire. So I can thoroughly recommend reading it. I think it was published in about 1952, so it's his war recollections. But yeah, that's my take on the book. I hope I've sparked your interest to read it and not not done too many spoilers for you. So we'll wait for the next one. But that's V2 by Major General Walter Dornberger. See you on the next one.